Faith Temple, noon and 7:30. And I think that's going to be right through the weekend, Max, is it?
Yes.
We should also, I think, tell the public that the announcement I had made earlier in the week, I owe you an apology, you, my audience. I had announced that Max and Charles Templeton would be here, and they would sit together in the same dais. That is, Charles, the agnostic, and Max, the born-again Christian. I thought that was a nice, way to get some sparks going on the program. It would have worked, too, except that Charles Templeton's tour has been postponed, and he will be here sometime during the last 7 days of November, that last week of November, because there was a problem with book distribution. So that's why he couldn't be here this morning. I don't want to be accused of having lied to you, because I didn't. That's the reason that Mr. Templeton couldn't be here. But Pastor Solbrekken is, and so he'll spend the final part of the program with me. Max, had Charles been here, do you want to tell us among the first things you would have said to him? What would they have been?
The first thing I would have said, Ray, is I would have said, do you remember the interview I did with you on Night Watch?
Yeah.
Over our radio program in Edmonton, by telephone, 30 minutes, knock down, drag out, and it was fantastic. And I would have said to him, in that interview we did, you made a statement. You said that Jesus Christ was the single most important influence in your life. And you said that Jesus Christ is a moral genius. But yet when I asked you, is Jesus Christ the Son of God? You said no. And I would have said to him, Charles, how can a moral genius be a colossal liar? Because Jesus Christ said, I am the Son of God. And yet Charles Templeton said, Jesus Christ is a moral genius. How can a moral man lie through his teeth? And I would have had him on that point right off at the start.
Well, I'll have to remember that, Max, so that when he is here later in the month, I can have him respond to that. Maybe, in fact, I can send you a tape recording of it. You may want to hear it.
Why don't you call me and I'd fly down?
I'll come now. I don't want you to do that. That's a great expense.
I'll be just coming back from Australia, and if I'm in Edmonton, I will be glad to fly down just to meet Charles Templeton right here with you.
Well, now listen, you may get a telephone call from me then on, on that basis. Max, we're hearing so much these days, and in fact, the gentleman that preceded you, William Deverell, the author of Mecca, we're hearing so much these days that centers on the Middle East and the likelihood that that's going to become the next tinderbox of history and maybe the next crisis point of history. Is there biblical support for that idea?
Very definitely. The wrap-up will be in the Middle East, and the USA, North America, is hardly even mentioned in prophecy. Prophecy centers around the Middle East and around Europe. The 10 Kingdom Confederacy, the European Common Market, Russia marching down. With her is Ethiopia, Persia, which is Iran, and Libya, Gomer, East Germany. She'll have with her all of her satellite countries, and they will march into and to try to take Israel. Now, the thing that a lot of people don't understand and don't know is that last year, in the month of June, when the Israelis, when they moved into Lebanon, they actually held back World War III because they found the blueprints for total annihilation of Israel, rooms filled with documents in the Russian language, pinpointing all of the strategic locations in Israel that they would destroy. They found 1 million uniforms that would no doubt be placed upon Soviet soldiers. They found 7 submarines underneath cities where they were hid away. They found hundreds and hundreds of miles of tunnels with all kinds of equipment, tanks. They found enough equipment and enough armament to actually arm a country like Sweden, a middle-sized European country. Mm-hmm. It was all there. And in Russian, everything was detailed. They were going to destroy Israel, and the target date was August the 4th, 1982.
So I think I hear you saying that except for Israel's intervention at that moment in time, we may indeed have had World War III.
That would have been the beginning of the end, no doubt about it, because the Israelis have 200 neutron bombs ringing Jericho. And that's one of the reasons Russia didn't march in or fight back when Israel destroyed the PLO and took over Lebanon.
Pastor Max Solbrekken, he's at Faith Temple twice daily, 12 noon and 7:30, and he's appearing with me this morning on Part 3 of Today's World. Thank you. Welcome back. To reintroduce my guest, he is Pastor Max Solbrekken. He is here at Faith Temple, bringing services to his congregations here on the following times and dates through the weekend and at the following times, 12 noon and 7:30 each day. And Faith Temple is located, as you may or may not know, at Banning and Notre Dame. But I think you probably know that, so there's no point in my reiterating it. But that's twice daily, 12 noon and again at 7:30 in the evening. Now, this morning we had announced, earlier in the week we had announced that Charles Templeton was going to be here, and that in fact Pastor Solbrekken and Mr. Templeton were going to, what shall I say, have at each other on my program. We couldn't arrange it because Mr. Templeton's tour has been canceled. Pardon me. It's been temporarily canceled and will be reinstituted later in the month of November. I understand the 4th week of November is the plan at the moment. But nevertheless, Pastor Max Solbrekken agreed to be here even though Mr. Templeton was not able to be here. I wanted to refer to a section of the book called Mecca by William Deverell because he was here, as you remember, in Part 1 this morning. And in the book he refers to, and this is fictional of course, but one wonders sometimes how close to truth fiction comes. He talks about an under-the-table deal being put together that will arm Saudi Arabia with cruise missiles, giving it the means to destroy Israel. Incriminating evidence needed to scuttle the deal is hidden away in a vault in a palace near Mecca. That's part of the book called Mecca by William Deverell. How do you respond to that sort of an idea?
Well, I would say it's quite possible. The Arabs have a tremendous hatred against the Jew, have had for a long, long time. There is also a hatred against the Jew that is heating up all over the world. The Jew will be isolated again as she has been before. We find anti-Semitism rising all over the world. And I believe this has to be because God is going to show the Jew that He is still God, and He will protect the Jew, and they are, in fact, the chosen nation. They're His chosen people, and I believe that since 1948, when they became a nation again, reborn, I believe that since that time, any nation that has taken an offensive view against the Jew and has stood against them has had the fury of God unleashed against them, and will have even more. And that's why Russia will be destroyed in the final analysis. When she marches against the Jew, God will fight for the Jew. I don't know if you read the book I and My People by a very famous historian, a Jewish historian. He tells about the 6-day war in 67, how that at that time the Egyptian generals and soldiers took the shoes off their feet and ran, left their tanks running with all the armaments, and they had seen angelic beings on the desert floor with flaming swords of fire, dressed in white garments, white robes. Yeah. And then in 73, he writes about the Yom Kippur War.
Yes.
And this man is not a believer now. Man is not an Orthodox Jew. He is kind of an agnostic type, but this has turned him back to God. He writes about the fact that in the Golan Heights, the Jews were actually taking a battering from the Syrians. And the Israeli commander threw up his hands and said, "Oh my God, we've had it. We've had it. Mm-hmm. There's nothing we can do. Our guns are jamming. They're too hot, incessant firing, and we've had it." And at that very moment, for hundreds and hundreds of soldiers, military men, they saw a spectacular intervention by Almighty God. They saw a human arm come through the heavens, 7 miles long, a white arm that reached out into the Golan Heights and pulled back the Syrian forces. And to this day, no one can understand what really happened. He brings it out so graphically that the Syrians were winning, and the next moment they were retreating. They don't know why. Of course, we know why. God moved upon the scene, and it's going to happen again. The Americans will say, and the people in NATO and the people in the UN will say, what are you doing to the Russian bear when they march down with all of their hordes to destroy the tiny nation of Israel? What are you doing? And they'll debate the thing in the, in the UN, etc., but they'll do nothing. Then what will happen is this: God will come down. There'll be an exchange, of course, between America and Russia, and Israel will use her neutron bombs, destroy all the soldiers coming in, and she'll use her atomic bombs. Russia will send her missiles on Moscow and vice versa. Then, when it's all over, Europe rises, the 10 Kingdom Confederacy, the Antichrist rises, and I won't be here, and I hope you'll be gone with me in the rapture, because I wouldn't want to be here then.
Okay. Max, you keep yourself pretty well informed on what's going on in the world, because I know that you
Yes.
You read the papers and you listen to radio and television reports, and you try to keep up on what's going on in the world.
Yes.
When the Korean airline disaster occurred, and it occurred in a split second like that, some people were saying that could have been the trigger for a major international
conflict, and yet it did happen.
What were your thoughts at the moment that it occurred?
Immediately I realized that Russia is very disorganized. The truth of the matter is that they didn't even know that the plane was there for 2 hours. They didn't even know it. You see, President Reagan comes on very strongly about this Russian power, the great Russian power. And they have a lot of missiles, and they do have a lot of power, but they're bankrupt in their ideology, they're bankrupt in their philosophy, they're bankrupt in their money, they have no food, they can't feed themselves, they've got a lot of power, but really Russia is not that well organized. And so they didn't even know that. And what happened was this: here were some fighter pilots who found out after 2 hours in a northern command that the plane was there. They didn't know what it was, and they were just excited, trigger happy, and they knocked the thing down. They didn't check into the thing to really find out what they should do. It was I believe it was a spur of the moment thing. The northern command gave the command. They did it. Afterwards, they were sorry they did it. No, I didn't expect any confrontation over that. The Americans don't want war. And America could wipe out Russia if she wants to. America is so powerful. Her missiles are so accurate. The Russians are not accurate. Now, the problem is that if we allow them time, they will become more accurate, because they are the greatest thieves, robbers. I mean, they're always stealing and buying information. But they don't have it between the ears like the Americans. And the Jews. Well, let's look at the Jews. I mean, America has all these very intelligent Jews. Now, people don't like me to say that, perhaps. But Jewish people are very smart, because they have to be smart to survive. The only conspiracy that is going today is the conspiracy for them to stay alive.
So what you might have said to me in answer to that question is, no, that's not where the major conflict would start. No. It will start in the Middle East.
It'll start in the Middle East.
It'll start because God's book
declares it. God's word says so.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so sorry I couldn't meet Templeton today, Charles Templeton, because I wanted to tangle with him.
I know, yeah, I know you're.
I was so anxious to meet him eyeball to eyeball, face to face.
Well, maybe we'll yet be able to arrange it, Max. We'll see if we can.
You know, Gordon Sinclair, I called him and said, Gordon, this was 2 years ago, I want to debate with you. Christianity, its effect upon the world.
Yeah.
The Bible. He said, look, Pastor Solbrekken. He said, look, Solbrekken, because he's not a gentleman at all. He's a gruff old man. He said, I've had 2 heart attacks. He said, I might get excited and I might die. And I said, and go to hell, because he doesn't believe in a hell.
Well, I hope you didn't cause him any undue strain, because at Gordon's age that could be that could be dangerous. Max, if we look at the question of the way in which nations come together now over common issues. Now, I'll tell you what I'm talking about. You mentioned NATO a moment ago, and there are other ways in which groups of nations are coming together toward some common objective.
Right, right.
What are we seeing there? Are we seeing power units being structured that will ultimately vie with one another for final ultimate power? Is that what we're looking at there?
The final scenario, as I see it, is that in this exchange over the attack of the Russians and her hordes against Israel, America will be partially paralyzed. There'll be an exchange. And when that happens, North America will have no clout. Mm-hmm. And when Israel unloads all those neutron bombs that she has, and remember now, South Africa has the atomic bomb, and Korea, I'm quite sure South Korea has the atomic bomb. There's an axis between South Korea and South Africa and Israel. They're very friendly. But what's going to happen is this: when all this takes place and Israel is victorious and America is partially paralyzed and Russia is destroyed because fire will fall on Gog and Magog, and only one soldier out of 6 will even make it back to Russia. Yeah. Okay, it'll take the Jews 7 years to bury the dead. 7 months to bury the dead. No unemployment in Israel. They'll all have a job finding dead Russians. And 7 years to melt down all the metal, okay, to reuse it. Then you'll find the European common market rising. The 10-kingdom confederacy, the Antichrist will come possibly out of that area, out of Syria, we think, and control the European common market, control the Roman Catholic Church, because by that time, when the Antichrist rises, all born-again Roman Catholics will be gone, and all born-again Protestants will be gone in the rapture, because Christ will come. And you see, the thing I think what will happen is this: Russia won't attack until after the rapture. Mm-hmm. There are so many Americans who believe in God. So many American leaders. President Reagan himself is a born-again Christian. Why? When all these born-again Christians are taken in the rapture, America will be literally paralyzed with the lack of all these military men. Russia will move, then the confrontation takes place, America paralyzed, Russia destroyed, then the European common market rise and promises Israel to secure her borders, and then the action starts, the Antichrist takes over.
Max, who's the Antichrist? I mean, I'm not asking you an esoteric question here. Is there an individual living now in the world to whom you can point and say, that's a likely candidate?
I would say that it's very difficult to pinpoint. Yeah. The only thing I can say is they sacrificed a pig on the temple, the Jewish altars, and desecrated the temple. Now, he was a Syrian, and he was the best type of the Antichrist that we have. Now, all these men, Adolf Hitler, the Caesars, Mussolini, some of the popes, they have been good types. Now, Martin Luther felt that the Pope of Rome is the Antichrist. Now, I believe, of course, that the Pope, the papacy, will produce the false prophet. But I believe the Antichrist is a political man.
Oh, I see.
Who will rise. You see, the
not necessarily come out of the church, then.
No. You see, what's going to happen is this, that, and even Saint Malachi, the Roman Catholic saint, makes this statement in 1100 AD. He makes this statement. He pinpoints all of the popes in the 20th century, right down to John Paul II. And the next one that's to come after John Paul II is to be an anti-pope who will destroy the church. Then the church will totally backslide. A lot of Protestants will join the Catholic Church. You know, the World Council of Churches and the Hindus and the Muslims will all come together in a superstructure. And we who believe Roman Catholic Protestant will all come out and join together as a born-again group of believers. We'll be persecuted, but Christ will come, will be raptured. Then the devil will take over everything. The church, the government, the world.
Pastor Solbrekken is at Faith Temple twice daily, 12 noon and 7:30 in the evening, and the location is Banning and Notre Dame. There you see, I remembered it, and I told you I would.
And miracles are happening. Let me tell you that some staggering miracles have happened this week.
Faith Temple twice daily, Banning and Notre Dame. We have news coming up. Shelley will bring you that after we take this short break.